If you have a tween or a teen, you probably already know that they aren't particularly known for opening up. It can be really easy to ask your kids, "How was your day?" or "How are things?" or "What's new?" and to be met with a, everything's fine, fine, grunt. That's just how they are. It's kind of the nature of having kids that age. But of course, as parents, we want to know, like, what is going on with your life? Let me in. We can miss those days when they were little and they talked and they told us all of the things, and then all of the sudden they have gone quiet. So if you are either in this age right now with teenagers who you're like, I want to be a little bit more informed in your life, because I want to know for curiosity's sake, because I'm your mom, but also because like this is the teenage years. There's so many decisions that are happening and like big things, and I want to make sure that I am able to guide you well in whatever it is that you are going through to help you navigate the upcoming traps that you don't even know are coming your way, and just to help you make wise decisions. Then you're going to love today's conversation. In it, we are speaking with Tim and Mark Shoemaker, authors of the book What to Say and How to Say It to Your Teen. This is a father son duo with over 50 years of combined parenting and youth ministry experience. And they have a lot of really good wisdom and perspective on how do we get our kids to talk with us? What should we be talking with them about? And I know that their book is so helpful with so many examples of here are the conversations you should be have. How can you have them? And today they are sharing some of their wisdom and knowledge with us. So if you are saying, hey, yep, I need some of that wisdom and knowledge, I'm either at that stage or we're going to be there really soon, then today's episode is for you. Well, Tim and Mark, I am so excited to have this conversation with you today. As the mom of a teenager, I can absolutely verify that as kids get older, they talk less and less. My littlest one, I cannot get her to stop climbing on my head. She wants constant attention. She does not leave me alone. I have to drive around to get her to sleep so I can have a minute to record a podcast episode. But then by the time that they get to be like 16, I'm like, okay, well, now, like, you don't talk to me, you don't tell me anything. It's kind of like sometimes like trying to get any information out of you. You go to bed without like you don't need hugs and kisses, good night anymore, or bedtime prayers, and it's a whole different ballgame. So I assume that I'm not the only one who's seeing this, and so I'm so excited to talk with you, to see kind of like what you are seeing. So will you start by just a real quick brief introduction to who you are and what you do and why you wanted to write this book?
Well, I'll go first. I'm Mark Shoemaker and dad of three kids, and was youth pastor for 12 years, and still do a little bit of work with teenagers now, but a lot of campus pastor work at the church that I'm at, working with adults all the way down to kids. So I get the full spectrum there. But big reason why I wanted to write this book was my work in youth ministry in those years, and seeing the difference it made in students' lives when their parents were the ones initiating the conversations, and when their parents were proactively talking to their teens about these important topics. I saw firsthand how much it mattered, but I also saw how intimidating, how difficult, how big of a struggle it was for parents to do that. And so anything that I could do to contribute even a little bit towards being a resource, towards helping them feel a little bit better about stepping into those conversations, I wanted to be part of.
Yeah, I would say some similar things there. My wife and I have worked many, many years as volunteers with youth. So we had that. And then even when I'm speaking at conferences or a school or whatever it would be, seeing so many of these things or talking to parents and feeling some of that heartache or they're just not sure how to get through, things change. And so we wanted to, um, I think with both Mark and I, so much our love for the students drives this thing. They need their parents, really need their parents in these years. And I think sometimes the enemy tries to throw wedges in there to cause a separation just when the kids need their parents most. And so we want to try to do anything we can to bring this together so they can have these good conversations and so that they can keep speaking into their lives.
I love that. So in your book, you talk about 30 conversations that parents and teens need to be having. Can you go over just some really practical examples? Like, what are these conversations?
Yeah, at the heart of all of them is trying to shape their heart for God and how to live for God. And so we call them tricky conversations because any one of them, there could be landmines within or kind of feel the struggle of where to start and where we want to go with it, what our goal is, and how to get their heart to that spot. So we talk about friendship, and we talk about dating. We address phone usage and screen time, their walk with God. We have a whole section on that and how to have conversations about where they're at now and how to help, shape them towards who they should be and how to grow in that in God. Dad, a couple, you got any other ones you got off the top of your head there?
Well, I think, no, I think you covered it great. There's the issues too about church. Sometimes kids are pushing back. They don't want to go to church at that age, or they're wondering if they got the right religion, or how can a good God allow bad things to happen? So some of these are heavy duty things, and maybe some things that we might even want to avoid. If they're not asking, we're not going to go there, type of thing. But we really do need to address them. Even, emotional things, anxiety. Do they seem depressed? Are we having questions about culture? The whole thing of gender and identity. If they're in a public school, they're going to be getting um, a lot of input on that. And so, how can we give them the truth in a way that doesn't, sound like we're on a soapbox with a bullhorn?
Yeah, so important because I have tried both ways to like be the like lecturing. It doesn't work very well, I can tell you. So I want to ask you, like, what are some mistakes that you see parents commonly making? Obviously, we can't just lecture them all day. We can't just avoid some of these conversations altogether, even though it can be really tempting to not bring them up. Because even if our kids aren't talking to us about them, they're probably like they're exposed to them, they're having thoughts and ideas. But when parents do say, okay, I'm going to have this conversation, are there common mistakes or missteps or things that happen where you're like, oh, like this seems like maybe the good idea, but actually, we should probably do it a different way.
There's a lot of things. I think, the Bible warns us about not exasperating our kids,
Mhm.
and that can happen so easily when they hit those teenage years. And so, you know, we can resort to some of those things. As a parent, we could be nervous. We're trying to do it right, and so we can resort to old tactics, and the tactics we used when they were elementary age will backfire when they're teens. They want to be treated different, even if they're not, even if they're acting like kids. They want to be treated like adults, right? And so sometimes we can resort to some of those things. But pushing their buttons, we know where they are. Claiming to know their motives, only God does. And so if we say you're just doing this because um, we're really going to exasperate them. If we interrupt them, we've heard this, we've heard their side of it a thousand times, and we're just going to sort of save some time and show them how well we know where they're going. If we interrupt them or don't allow them to finish their thought, sarcasm, belittling, these things are toxic. They're lethal. So any of those things are going to be among conversation killers.
Yeah, just to add in, there are some other practical things that we noticed too is like trying to squeeze a really important conversation into a time slot that is just not very productive for a conversation. Maybe it's our mind is too busy and we're trying to do too much in that moment and to try to just handle it in the moment and like, I'm just gonna say what needs to happen and just like then end of conversation, that's it. Trying to squeeze these conversations throughout our day might not be the best spot for it, but push it back when you have some time, have some space. Give yourself time to think about it, to prepare for it. Um, so I think trying to even going into a conversation and thinking, well, this is going to be the time that I talk about dating, and you try to handle like so much in one setting. That's where I think we can get a little bit like lecturing a little bit, and all of a sudden it's been 20 minutes and we've been the only one talking. I think trying to think what are steps that we can take? What are some bite-size conversations? What's the first step in this to move and shape their heart towards where it should be.
Yeah, I love that. So I can definitely see how those toxic behaviors that we fall into without even realizing it. I know there have been too many times where I just cut off my kids when they're talking because I'm like, I already know what you're going to say. Like, you've already told me
Mhm.
this so many times before. I'm like, I'm just going to stop you before you get into trouble and like just tell you how it is. Like from my perspective, that makes perfect sense because I'm like, I already know what you're going to say. I've heard it before, but I can see how for our kids, like if we're not listening, of course they're going to stop talking. So can you give us some like a better way of talking to them? How do we bring up things in a way that actually gets them to open up? Because even if we approach them with the most like gentle and we have all the time, and we're going to set this time aside, you still are going to end up with kids who are like, okay, yeah, like I'll listen. I know that you care, but being able to draw out of them like what they're actually dealing with, what they're actually thinking about, their thoughts, and what if they've done some things. Like sometimes we as moms want to know these things, and our kids don't want to tell us. So how do we balance that?
Mm. You know what I was surprised by as we were writing this? How many of the conversations started with a question and really trying to hear their starting point for it? Because I got my starting point. I definitely got my ending point of where I'm hoping it's going. And a lot of times I think we might know where their starting point is or we have a pretty good idea. But to ask that question does a lot more than just give them a chance to say what they're saying. It communicates some value to them, which builds trust and for them to realize that we're in this together as a team. I think anything that you can do to relay that verbally and non-verbally that we're really in this together and I'm here to help you um is helpful. So asking questions on the front, a good question on the front end, and then really taking time to listen. I remember as I was growing up, one thing my dad would do is take notes as I would talk, which sort of like made me like, heck yeah, like that's right. Like I got some good stuff to say, and he's but a lot of that was him just making sure that he heard it. But then I trusted what he was gonna say more because I really thought he was hearing me and what I was saying and understanding me. If I think if teenagers know that we understand them and hear them, that builds a lot of trust. And then one thing we talk about too is even the atmosphere of where we have these conversations help a ton. Um, and thinking through that beforehand. Is it gonna be one of those conversations that we're on a walk and we talk? Uh, or drive and we're both looking out the front windshield and we don't have to like look at each other. Maybe it's more awkward or I know something my dad was big on that I just think is great is like taking them out somewhere. Go to a restaurant for some of these conversations because even that communicates value to them and treating them as older and the importance of really we're in this together and I want to make sure we do this together.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, I love that. Um, thinking about the atmosphere, he talked a lot about that, and just to piggyback on that restaurant thing, think about it, Brittany Ann, is, where do adults go for conversations? They go to a restaurant, they go to a coffee shop. Our teens wanna be treated like an adult, and so a good start is to start someplace like that, and also the chances of them stomping out, of a restaurant are pretty low. It keeps everything just a little bit more civil, and think about that timing. You know, not only, what to say as we start things out, but, what is our timing gonna be? When are we gonna say this? You know, the story, when Jesus turned over the tables, we think about, boy, he went in, he saw everything that was going on, and he started flipping tables, and he got some things done. He didn't let the moss grow under his feet. But of that passage in Mark 11, I got my Bible right here. Let me pull this and just read a couple of verses before that. We're used to on reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple area and began driving out those who were buying and selling. And as a parent, we can be all about, that action, right? But actually, here's what happened. You go 4 verses earlier, it says, Jesus entered Jerusalem and went to the temple. He looked around at everything. But since it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. The next day he came back and he took care of business. And that's a great lesson. Sometimes, he saw the things going on, but he felt that wasn't the best time for a conversation. Everybody's tired. Let's everybody get some rest and do it tomorrow. And sometimes we have to do that with our teens. We might be all fired up. We're going to have this conversation now, but we want to make sure, is this the best time for them to have this conversation, and be mindful of that? Or if it's going to be interrupting, we're pulling them from something that they were supposed to be at and they're late. That'd be a really bad time to have that conversation. So yeah, just little things like that. Atmosphere, timing, and of course, our tone. Our tone. You know, you you can say something really hard, but with a really, really nice tone, and it's a lot easier to accept because they know it hurts you to say this as much as it hurts them to hear it, and they can tell that you care and that you love them and you're trying to protect them. So tone's a lot of it too.
Yeah, I know I have lots of conversations here about tone. That even if you say the right thing, if you say it in the wrong way, like it just you're not communicating what you're meaning to. I love how you talked about the example of Jesus in the temple. I didn't actually know that detail. I had not yet learned that, so I'm excited to learn something new in that regard. But it makes me think of another question, which is how do we know when we have a situation where, like, no, we need to stop everything and we need to deal with this right now. This is serious. Like, I don't care if you're missing the thing. Like, we are like dropping everything. This is getting dealt with right now versus this is something that it's important, but like it can wait till tomorrow. It can wait until next week. Maybe the kids have extracurriculars every day. And so you're like, okay, this weekend, we're going to set some time aside. We're going to talk about it versus a third option of, maybe it was just a one time thing. It's not that big a deal. Our kids aren't perfect. We can't get on their case about everything. So there are a lot of things I'm sure where we're just going to let it go. And how do we decide which bucket things fall into?
One thing I would think about is whatever this issue is that came up, and you're like, if you feel you need to deal with it right now, do a quick check, pray, make sure, because if this is about our pride, our ego, our image, is something of big concern to us. uh, Delay it, delay it. That's a general rule of thumb, but I would be careful about that. But, let's think, for example, let's say when the kids were little and you're at church and one of them runs out the side door and they're running through the parking lot and you see a car coming, you are going to immediately react and shout to them to stop. You don't care who's there. You don't care if somebody with a hearing aid's in front of you and you're gonna blast, their ears. Doesn't matter. It's all about at this moment, it is so urgent, and I think you'll sense those times. If something is really urgent, it's about their safety, it's about their well-being, um, we might wanna have that conversation right away. But then you wanna clear the decks, get the distractions away as best you can. If there's somebody else to babysit the other kids, send the kids to the other room or the basement, whatever it is, call in a neighbor, somebody, but you want to give all your attention there. If you sense something and you see that your son or daughter is in danger, yeah, you probably want to deal with that right away. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff is so good, and I think the only thing I would add to it is thinking about do you know that right now is the best? Are you gonna have the best conversation if you do it right now? So a few things with that, like, do I know where I want to take the conversation? Am I sure I know how to address this? Am I in a good spot? Am I annoyed right now? In my own day, am I too frazzled? Anything like that, right? So like last night, we're at dinner. I was at church all day, came home for dinner, and then I was going back to church with my teenager to bring her to youth group. And so it's just a quick stop home. And it was at the dinner table. Um, Something came up with one of my sons, and it's a pretty big deal. He was dishonest about something. And I'm like, I don't have time. Like, already, this is a quick stop home. This is dinner together. Then, and it felt so big. And I wasn't even sure what I wanted. Like, how do I address this in that moment? It was so big. It was so important, so valuable of a teaching opportunity that I was like, I can't do it now, but I can say, this is such a big thing that we have to get right and that you have to understand and have to learn from, that we're actually going to push this off until we can talk about it tonight. And so so he knows, so he's had to sit in that for 24 hours, which I think maybe helps, hopefully helps soften his. I've been praying it softens his heart as we get into it. But for me, all day I keep coming back to it, and I'm like, man, what? Where am I going to be when I have this conversation? What am I going to say? What's my tone? What's my heart? What all those things? It gives time. So I think that that's part of it too. Like,
Mhm.
we could always say, oh, this is really important. It's not just if it's important. It's is am I setting myself up? Am I setting my teenager up to the best possible situation to do this right now? And you got to be real about that too. Like, don't just give yourself a pass because you just don't want to have the conversation. Like, yeah, 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 later, later, later. Like, set a time for it. Like, be real and actually do it. Um, but that's been helpful for me to be like, no, this is not it. This is not the right time.
Yeah, I love that. What would you say to the mom who's like, okay, I listening to this, like I already know I have blown it so many times. So if I go and have a conversation, and even if I take like all of these tips and try to do everything just the perfect right way now, because I've blown it so many times, I don't have my kids' trust. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to shut it out. They're going to be defensive. Where does she even start if she knows like she's already starting from a place of very far behind?
I'll say one thing quick, Dad. I know you got a ton of good stuff on this, but like sometimes finding wins and totally other arenas of conversations, if you will, and building up trust in some of those things, I think is really massive. Um, and so if you can work on communication and how you listen and talk about other things, I really think that that translates over into some of the bigger topics, or maybe you need to evaluate, we're just not connecting very much at all in other ways. And maybe that might be the place to start to say, I'm going to go out and there's no agenda of anything serious. I'm just going to have quality time with my teenager. And that's an investment towards the end of that connection there. I think translates into how you talk and relate about all kinds of things. And then just one other quick thing I'd say is just from my experience as youth pastors, seeing over and over how forgiving teenagers really can be because it's desperately what they want. They do want a parent who loves them, supports them, helps them, um, or that they can trust. Maybe not the help part. They're maybe skeptical in the help part of how much they really need help. But I do think that they want to believe in you and to have that connection and that relationship deep down. So uh, a true apology goes a long way. And I have seen teenagers give second, third, fourth, fifth chances. Um, and there is restoration. It's the gospel that we believe in, that restoration and healing happens and that God brings that. So, a lot of reasons to still have hope, and just keep going and striving after it.
Oh yeah, wow, that's really great. I love that, Mark. And one thing, it may or may not work, but just a thought that came to the top of my mind, when you're trying to have those other conversations, not about necessarily the tricky things, but just to kind of open that communication. If there's something you can do, an activity, go someplace, even if it's just, if your teen loves a coffee shop or whatever, going someplace, but let them invite a friend. And a conversation will really move when there's a friend there. The two of them will be talking, and that other teen probably is going to try to pull you in too. And I think that'll help all the way around. And plus, you understand more where they're at, and you're hearing them. You're going to hear all kinds of things that you didn't even know were going on. That's one thing. Another thing, especially if you're starting from a position where you feel like you've blown it, your teen is flexing, they're pushing back. Um, where do we go? There's sometimes with these conversations we have, there's alternate things that we give. Sometimes, we're going to pass this off. We know our teen needs this conversation, but we're going to say, hey, I think I'm not the best one for it, but grandma is, or grandpa is, or an aunt or an uncle or a spouse. And so we're going to hand it off. Sometimes um, we'll ask an expert, we'll get somebody involved. Sometimes we'll do object lesson. There's a great one I would do with a teen, especially if they're pushing back. And what you do is you pick up rat traps. I've got one here. So it's not a mouse trap. It's a rat trap, and it's like a mouse trap, but a lot bigger, and it's got a really strong kill bar on it, right? And so you get about 8 of these. You set them up in a narrow hallway in your house. Get your teen over, ask them to take off their shoes and socks, and say, "Okay, we've got all these rat traps set here. What if I said you have to go through this hallway, and we're going to take your shoes and socks off, and we're going to blindfold you and turn you around and send you through. You can't shuffle through. You've got to step. You know, would you do that?" And our teens probably like, "No way are they going to do that, right?" But what if we said, "You have to go through this hallway. It's something that you have to do." You can do it like that. Or what if, mom put her hands on your shoulders and you put your hands on mine. And even though you're blindfolded and barefoot, I tell you, I'm going to walk you through this, and I'm not going to let you step in a trap. And if you have to go through this hallway, would you go through it that way versus the other? And they would probably have to admit that, or at least begrudgingly, right? And then it's a chance to say, "Honey, this is a picture of these next few years in your life. This is the teenage corridor. And there are so many traps. Mom's been down here before. She knows where most of these traps are. And I want to protect you from that. I know you want your freedom. I understand that. And believe me, you're not going to have to fight me for your freedom. I'm going to set you free on the other end of this corridor. But I want you to be able to run. I want you to be able to soar. I don't want you to come out a cripple." And so many teenagers come through this corridor and they end up a cripple, some of them for life. I'm not trying to fight you. I'm trying to protect you, but we got to communicate. We got to talk. You got to tell me what's on your mind. You got to tell me what's going on, and I'll talk to you about the traps, and let's go through it together. So something like that, Brittany, is another example of a way we can do it without just a talk with them and help them see our heart.
Yeah, I love that. Will you tell, for those of us who are listening to this episode, will you tell us where we can go to find you online to connect further, to get your book, and just to see what you're up to and stay connected?
For me, they can go to timshoemaker.com. That'd be an easy way to get me and contact me through there. Mark?
I'm on Instagram, so you can catch me there, Mark Shoemaker 3. Follow me there, and that's where I post most of my stuff.
Awesome. Love it. And then one final question for both of you. Say there is a mom who is listening who says, "Okay, yes, I have not done a good enough job in this area, or I want to do better." And she is going to take a Post-it note and write something on it, to put it on her mirror to remind her every day to live out this wisdom. What is the one Post-it note sized thing that you want her to know and remember?
Mm. For me, I would say, remember, this is not about winning an argument. It's about reaching their heart.
I'm trying to think of something that fits on a Post-it note, but it'd probably be something, a prayer of God, I need you. I need your help. Give me wisdom, or something like that. Because so much of this is God using us and helping us, softening their heart, giving us the words to say, giving us the wisdom. And so if I'm regularly going to God for it, and it's one of the things we talk about in how to prep for and any of these conversations, is to start with praying. If you're praying regularly for this, God's Spirit's going to be, preparing you and getting your heart ready with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, all that, and helping form that in your teenager's heart too. So probably a prayer.
Love that. Well, thank you, Tim and Mark, so much for a thought-provoking conversation. Hopefully, the moms who are listening are like, "Okay, I have some areas of improvement, and I have some conversations that I need to have." So thank you so much for your time today.
And thanks for having us.
Here.
All right. Well, hopefully that conversation with Tim and Mark gave you a lot to think about. Whether you recognize, hey, I have been making some mistakes that, I just haven't been thoughtful enough. I probably should be a little bit more kind. I probably should interrupt a little bit less. Or maybe there's some conversations I have been avoiding that I need to just go ahead and have. So maybe you're already seeing, like, okay, here are some things I already know from this conversation I need to do. So you already know what your next action steps are. But if you were saying like, "Okay, like, I know I need to get better in this area, but honestly, I don't know what my next action steps are. Like, I know I should be having these conversations, but, like, what specifically should I be talking with my kids about? Like, what are the topics, that all parents should be having to make sure that their kids know, like, what are like, I wanna make sure I cover all of my bases, and I wanna make sure that I have conversations in a way that is good and fruitful, that actually results in a conversation and not just me lecturing them constantly." I am a big fan of lectures at some points, but not all the time. So, how do we have those really good conversations? If that's you, then I definitely encourage you to check out Tim and Mark's book, What to Say and How to Say It to Your Teen, so that you can get their wisdom and perspective with their combined 50 years of experience with kids and parenting and youth ministry. Definitely wisdom that you want to tap into. So whether you say, "Hey, I know exactly what conversation I need to have," or, "Hey, I don't know what conversation I need to have, and I'm gonna go figure that out," I really encourage you to not drop the ball in this area. As a parent, I love um, that they opened up the conversation with, "Hey, as a parent, you are so important to your teens. They have never walked this road before. You've been a teenager before. It's been a minute. Things are different. I will give you that. But you have walked this road before. So you do have more knowledge and wisdom to share than maybe you realize, and probably a lot more than your kids think you do. So we want to make sure that we're stewarding that well, that we're using it wisely, and that we're not making these silly mistakes that we could easily be avoiding." So go ahead, grab their book if you think that would be helpful for you. And as always, make sure that you subscribe so that you can come back here next week, where we are always bringing you really fantastic, thought provoking conversations to help you to grow in faith and family, to love God and to love your family really well. So, have those conversations. It may not be easy, it will be worth it. But have the conversations, and I will see you here next week.